levels of the IRB review. I like watched the video and everything, but they named like a bunch of different categories like in it, like about like non-invasive or like getting specimens. Like, do we need to know all of those that they listed, or just kind of know the?
No, you just kind of need to know. I think there are only 2 questions. Of course, there are only 3 levels. And you'll be given like 2 examples or 2 kind of studies and asked what level review do you think it would be. One of them is super obvious because I said it in class, so I would think that, and I think I even said it in the review. So that one should be easy. You guys did these in your city training too. Basically, most things are not going to be exempt. The only thing that you're going to see exempt is if you're talking kind of absolutely zero risk whatsoever. Meaning, if I were to go explore the behaviors of college student during block party Halloween and was just sitting outside and taking notes and watching you guys, or say I got on all of the Barstool Sports and analyzed all the videos, and I didn't share anything in the analysis that made it evident like who you were. I didn't share any of those images. It was just words of me describing what I saw. That would be exempt. Anything else that involves any type of communication with anybody is probably going to be at least expedited. So like my survey with the all of my research, I've never done anything that was full board review. So even sitting down and talking with the adolescents about cyberbullying, I was able to get that expedited because it was very minimal risk. They may have gotten upset and cried, I guess, if it was a recent experience or it really affected them, but it didn't seem to be the case. So it was expedited. But like, for example, the study that I did with the other researchers they had done the study, I reviewed the data that was with people who had experienced adolescent dating violence. And some of them were still experiencing dating violence, and they were telling stories of things that were illegal, like criminal activity, like being drugged by cars and whatnot. That's full board review. Because that has the potential for getting somebody really emotionally upset. It has the potential for their partner, who they may still be with, retaliating. They find out that they've talked about it. Anything that requires anything invasive, like taking lab specimens. Most of the time, anything that even involves like monitoring heart rates and things like that are also considered full board review. Surveys, often interviews, unless, again, you're asking about something pretty intense. If you're asking somebody to tell you about their domestic violence experience or, something really traumatic, that would probably be full board review also. But a lot of times those are expedited because unless the person's actively going through it or has gone through it recently, or it was something extremely traumatic, it could be expedited because it's not likely to cause much more than just a little bit of emotional distress. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Observation by itself is expedited. Or, I'm sorry, is exempt. Just observation, not interacting with anybody. So I'm looking at this study guide. I usually, because some of the exams we have stuff we've used before. You guys are a little bit different because we did 4 exams and a final last year. So you guys actually got off a little bit easy because there was a lot of stuff on that last year's exam, 3, 4, and final that were tough stuff that you guys didn't get. So you kind of made out that way. So that's why I had to change the Kahoot, and the exams, there's a few new questions because I covered some different things that they didn't get last year. It was easier stuff though, not harder stuff. So what is on that outline is what is on that test, period. Almost exact. I mean, there are questions from the quantitative appraisal slide on validity, reliability, and applicability. There are qualitative questions on all of those elements of trustworthiness. Ethical considerations. There are 5 of them listed. I can't say that every single one of them are on there, but just glancing, I see at least 3 just off the top of my head. Mind you, there's 30 questions, so it's hard for me to remember every single one of them, but let me see if I can pull up the exam real quick. I'm really bad about when I title them, not titling them, select all that applies, so that makes it, I know there are at least 2. There is one question on the critical appraisal. It talks about the phases, I think. There's one slide. Catherine, I think you asked about that. It asked about the phases. There's one question on it, and I'm basically giving you the definition, and you just have to tell me which one of them it is. I'm not asking for them in like an order or anything.
Okay, so just basically know what they are, and it'll be okay.
It's not like they're hard. You guys know what those words mean. Every phase is a word. But if you have any idea which those words mean, and they're pretty, other than rapid critical appraisal, they're all normal, everyday dictionary words that you guys should know at junior level college. So I would think if I gave you a definition, you'd probably be able to, I would expect that everybody's going to get that right. If you don't, then you just weren't paying attention at all. There's questions. There's one question at least about identifying. I give you like an abstract and ask you like what the independent or the dependent variable is. So you have to be able to pull that out of the question. By the way, I could not put these attachments in there like images like I did with the tables because they were too big. So when I tried to put it in image form, it wouldn't take it, said the file was too large and it wouldn't let me minimize it down. I even pulled it over to my phone and was trying to do stuff on it there to make it smaller. So they're in PDF form. So I think that you guys have the ability to view those, but you need to make sure that you can. I need to post an announcement that says that, but they're PDFs that will be within the question that you have to open. So dependent, independent variables, I think I can guarantee you there's questions about compensation because I don't know how many times I talked about compensation. And that's starred on your outline.
When you were referencing phases earlier, mine thing kind of cut out. You're referring to the IO model, right? In terms of the phases?
No, it's in the quantitative appraisal PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
It lists like recommendation, synthesis, rapid critical appraisal, I think an evaluation maybe.
Okay, I know what
you
you're
just
talking
have to know what they mean. You don't have to know them in order or anything like that. The ethical concerns, like I might give you an example and say, this is what's going on in this situation. What ethical concern may this potentially violate? If you know what the ethical concerns are, and you know how to define them, you should be able to answer. They're not hard. If you can't open the PDF, I'll try to have something available that maybe I can pull up on the screen or something, but make sure that you have you guys have free access to like PDF reader or whatever it is. So go online and download a PDF, and if you can open it, you should be able to open the one from the exam. There wasn't any way other for me to do it. I tried and tried.
But as far as I'm aware, Examplify shuts your computer's ability to open up any other program.
It says in Examplify, because I used them in the past when we were in person, and they worked. But it just gave me a warning, just like it did in the past, that the users must have a PDF reader of some sort on their computer for it to work. So I think it allows it to access that. But if you don't have anything like that at all, then it's probably like, what am I supposed to open this with? Let's see. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to sending it to you guys ahead of time and being like, print this. But then someone's going to say, I don't have capability to print. And then somebody's going to want to have another screen up with that PDF. And then it's just going to be this big old nightmare. There's another one that provides information from an article that you have the article in front of you. And I ask you, like, paying particular attention to what I identified in that article. And it's like circled in the article. What would be the biggest concern here? And then based on what it says, what I circled, you should be able to come to a conclusion. And those are based on like things related to validity and things related to all of those that are listed for quantitative and qualitative on the outline. I've got so many screens open, I can't. So like, one key thing I will tell you guys is you need to know the difference between the words that are listed for quantitative appraisal and the words that are listed for qualitative appraisal. So just like I did on the Kahoot, if I ask you a question and it's looking for something qualitative, if you start looking for words like generalizability and validity, it's wrong. It's going to be wrong because that has nothing to do with qualitative. That is quantitative. So you've got, the first thing you need to do is, what is she asking me? Is she asking me about something related to qualitative or quantitative? And if it's qualitative, your mind should immediately go to trustworthiness, which is that Lincoln's and Guba framework that has those 4 words, okay? Credibility, dependability, transferability, and confirmability. If I'm talking about quant, then we're looking at reliability, applicability, and then the types of validity, because there's internal validity and external validity. Internal validity, you could have, now study validity is looking at the study as a whole, and that might be an answer. If I'm talking about external validity, I'm talking about generalizability. Can this be generalized? Well, in what cases would you not be able to generalize something in quantitative research? If I'm doing a quantitative study and I want to generalize it, what would make it difficult for me to do that?
If the sample size was too small, right?
If it's too small, or if it's too
specific.
Too specific, too homogeneous, if all of your subjects are the same.
It's like it's similar to the doing all the experiments on like the rich people that you refer to, right? Right. So external validity, you have to have good representation, you have to have a good sample size. And that's all quantitative, okay? That has nothing to do with qualitative, because we don't worry about generalizability with qualitative. We worry about transferability. But on those slides for qualitative, it talks about how transferability, it describes transferability in qualitative, and it says this approximates to generalizability in quantitative, right? There are 4 of those. It says dependability is, I can't even remember. I have to go back and look. One of them approximates to reliability. The other one approximates to blah. Know those, okay? Know which one equals what in quant and how that equals, what word that equals in qual. Because they're measuring the same thing, but just in different ways, because one is by numbers and one is by words. So the words are different, but they're kind of looking at the same element of the study. And I might give you an example, and it says, in quantitative, this is blah. What would the nurse be searching for in a qualitative study? So knowing how those words are equal, and those are all directly from the slides. The quant critical appraisal, the qual critical appraisal. Most of the questions came straight from those. Select all that applies. So anything where you've got more than about 4 words on a slide, like 4 lists of things, those are things that are potential select all applies. So like those 4 things of trustworthiness, that could be one. I may ask you the types of validity, and you've got
Instrument validity, study validity, internal validity, external validity. There's 4 of them. That might be one. You guys know how I feel about qual, so I would say that it's a really good idea to know that stuff. Because you get taught quant all the way up through graduate school, but nobody ever gives you a lot of details on qual. So that's my job, is to give you information on qualitative research. I may give you an example and say, well, here's another one. I just told you one, that this is a violation of which ethical safeguard. So you got to know what those means. What does beneficence? What does confidentiality? If you don't know it, like you've never seen those words before, then that's probably not the answer. I feel like everything that is an answer, we talked about. There may be other words that are research words that are real words, but if we haven't talked about them, that's not going to be the answer. So, ignore those if you've not seen them before. There's one question on what the Iowa model is based on. And another, actually, it's not a select all that apply. It probably could have been, but think about what the benefits are from using the evidence-based practice models. There's 5 or something listed on that list, 4 or 5. That could have been a select all that apply. It's not. I know there's 2. I'm thinking there's either 3 or 4, and that's it. There's not a ton of select all that applies on this one. Those are sometimes, they're hard to write. Okay, here's another one. Think about the commonalities of EBP models. So I told you all of those different models, but we only talked about the Iowa model in detail. But in general, they all have all of these characteristics that are common. So as a group, what do we use those models? Well, we use them to identify the stakeholders, so identify who's involved, to identify barriers, things that are going to get in our way. We use it to evaluate. We use it to identify the problem. They're all on that list. So if you know what those are, then the ones that they're not, you should be able to rule out. And I think there's at least one select all apply that has 7 answers. Now, all of those 7 aren't right, but there are 7 options. I think, wait a minute, no, maybe there's only 6. There's only 6 options. I think I had 7 and I thought, wait, that would kill them. So let's go back to 6. So I gave you 6 instead. Organizational barriers or facilitators to EBP. Those are potential select all that applies. Like I said, anytime you're looking at a slide and it's here's a list of blah, those are select all that applies. It's just waiting to happen. I may give you some words that you might see in a sample consent and say which part of the consent would this be addressed in. So you've got purpose, you've got an area on compensation, right? All those things that I said that you had to have in a consent. And if you guys go to, I can't think of the site. It's called, let me see, Office of My University Office of Compliance. That's the research office. If you go there, where is it at? Human subjects research. You can Google it. If you look up Ohio University research sample consent forms, they're there. And it gives you, really any sample consent form from anywhere is going to tell you what there are required things that I have to have in every consent to make the OUIRB happy. Purpose, confidentiality, compensation, procedures. So in a manuscript, that would be your methods. That's explaining exactly what you're doing. And that's where things like how long it's going to take somebody to be involved in your study is going to be. That's exactly what you're going to ask them to do is going to be in there, how you're going to measure it. All of that's going to be in that section.
It's just those same points that were in that video you linked us to, right? For the
should be. Yeah, I mean, it should have been in your city training. It should be in your book. It should be in, I'm sure it's in a PowerPoint somewhere. It's in the video. All of the things that are on this exam were given to you in multiple places. That's why I said if you go through all of those things that I provided, you should be good. If somebody only went through one, then they may have only saw it one time. But all of those things were connected, especially with the ethical stuff and the consent-related stuff. I think informed consent's on here 2 or 3 times with different type questions. There's at least 2 questions from one abstract. You get the abstract each time. It's not like I try to trick you and say, go back to that abstract. It's there attached each time. There's one where I provide a section of a study. I may ask you what the research question is. And I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I'm saying don't be triggered if you're like, oh my God, I can't find the research question. Well, maybe the answer is just like it was in the Kahoot and it's not explicitly stated. Maybe it's implied and you can figure out what it is, but they didn't actually say this was our research question. So don't be afraid to choose that as the answer. That's why I put that in the Kahoot.
So basically, like, if they don't say, like, this was what we were researching, then you can just kind of basically imply that the answer is that it's not explicitly stated. Like, you don't have to go digging through the entire article to try to figure out what their research question is.
And I'm not going to give you the entire article. I gave you either an abstract or I gave you a chunk, a specific chunk. The one that I actually gave you a chunk of, I circled specifically in it. You don't have to read any of it other than what I circled. I moved it over to my phone so I could use my little blue marker on it and highlight it and show you exactly what I want you to pay attention to. One of them is a chunk of article. And then the other one is, I think there's 2 questions off of one, and you're given the abstract each time. So there's a full abstract there, but I told you guys that if you're looking for the research question, you don't need to be reading at the bottom because that's not where they put that. They put that towards the top. So be looking there, and they're going to imply it. But, most of the time, I always say this was the purpose our study aimed to. If it says aim to, that's your study aims. And a lot of times your question is right there or it's implied right there. But if it's not clear that you can't really specifically be like, yeah, that's exactly what they said it was, it's probably just implied and not stated. Yeah, it looks like there's 1 or 2 about here's the situation. What is the potential for a violation of an ethical principle? So knowing what those principles are and, okay, what kind of things would violate that? So what kind of things would violate voluntariness? Didn't we talk about giving people too much money? And that getting them to participate even though they might not want to, but because they want that money. That is something that's the kinds of things you need to process. So if I'm deceiving them in any way, that would also be violation of, and the words might change a little bit. One minute you might see justice, and the next minute you might see fair subject selection. But on the outline, I've got them listed together. I've got justice, and then parentheses, fair subject selection. Autonomy goes along with respect for persons. Voluntariness would go along with respect for persons and autonomy, because you're making the decision to voluntarily participate, which you're respecting the person. So those all go together. But I really don't think if you know those ethical principles, and you guys have been taught some of those since you were freshmen, because we cover them in 1111, you should be fine. I wrote these not trying to be tricky at all, like trying to just make sure that you knew the concepts. Remember that you are always trying to be non-maleficent, which is to do no harm. You are always trying to be beneficent, so you're always trying to maximize the benefits, right? We want the highest benefits at the least risk, and then we don't worry about compensation. Compensation is not a consideration when we are originally assessing ethicalness. It's not a part of it. It's not until we see that it's a problem, that it may potentially be a problem. But usually we don't even consider compensation as being unethical, because the only time it's a problem is when we're kind of unknowingly forcing someone to participate because we're giving them too much. It'd be like me telling you guys, I want you to participate in a study. I'm going to give you 30 bonus points. Well, some of you are definitely, probably not you guys, but some of you guys are definitely going to do it because you're failing. So that would make you do it even if you didn't want to, which is then a problem. What type of things, again, that's into ethical stuff. So what types of things are going to best ensure that your participants are safe? And, you'll read the answers and say, okay, which one of these are an ethical thing? Which one of these things are actual things that I can actually do? Because I might put an answer in there that is completely wrong for you to do, or you just completely can't do. It's just not feasible for you to do. Remember vulnerable populations, and that there are like 3 questions on vulnerable populations. One might ask like, which is not, or which is an example of a vulnerable population. It may ask about, when do we use vulnerable populations? Can we use them? Yes, we can. We do vulnerable populations research, but whatever research we're doing has to be relevant to that population. I can't go in and study suicide rates and just study them on prisoners because I have access to prisoners. That's not okay. If I'm examining suicidal ideation rates in prisoners, then that's specific to prisoners. But just by picking a certain age group and saying, oh, well, I work at a prison, so I'm just going to access those people, that's not okay. So it's got to have relevance to them. Same way with pregnant women, same way with children, same way with the elderly. You can't just use them because they're an easy population to get to. There's one on IRB level of review. I think there's 2 of those. And then in your city training, it talked about why do we use IRB? What is their job? Well, their job is to read our IRB proposal and either approve it or reject it based on whether or not they think the study is ethically sound. So they're protecting the subjects. They are ensuring that we have met standards, or we are proposing to meet standards of confidentiality, HIPAA, all that. And they provide approval. They do not assist in the study, okay? IRB does not help you with data collection. They don't help you with data analysis. They don't help you with any of that. They are there. You submit your IRB to them, and they say whether or not you can start that study. You cannot do anything on a study aside from just randomly preparing materials. You cannot interact with anybody in any way or analyze or collect any data without their approval. But once it's approved, all they do is monitor. Okay, they don't assist you with anything else from that point on, unless you contact them and ask them for something. But otherwise, that's it.
In the video that we watched, it was saying that you could make amendments to your like statement you send them, but they said that you could only have one amendment on at a time. But I was kind of confused because the person in the video said you could have multiple things on that amendment that you're going to change. So when it says one amendment, it means like one submission, but there can be multiple points on it.
Right. Like they can, yeah. I can submit one, and they usually do. They'll send you amendment requested, and they'll have 5 areas that they didn't like. Like they might say, you need to add this number to your IRB consent and you need to change this wording here and change that there. So in that case, there's 3 things. So you would submit that amendment addressing those 3 things. But what they're saying is if I submit that amendment and address those 3 things, I have to wait until they either approve or reject that one before I can submit another one, because it will show then that it's pending amendment and there's no way to like pull that one back and resubmit it. You have to wait, and then you're like, crap, I forgot to add this. They're going to come back and say, you have to change that. And I know they are, but I have to just wait for them to tell me that, wait to get it back from them. That's just what that means. You just can't, 5 minutes later after I submit it, I can't decide to add something else. I have to wait until they send me a response back. So yeah, the role of the IRB, that's a select all and apply. I may give you titles of studies and ask you like which one's most likely to have vulnerable subjects just by reading the study title. Should be pretty obvious in that one. If you know what vulnerable populations are. There's the second IRB review one. The basic elements of informed consent. Like I said, I think there are at least three questions on informed consent specific. So know what the basic things are that have to be included. Know what's under those things. That if I were to give you an example of something that's in a consent, you would be able to tell me where you would find that in the consent, under what section. And that's one of those basic elements. Where does it go? That's one we just talked about. There may be 1 or 2 questions. There's at least one on, I'm going to say the nurse is looking at a research article. Where can they expect to find something? So remember how I said, I don't expect you don't have to read the article. I'm just asking you. You guys have done critical appraisal, so you know where you can find things in articles, right? You know where to go to find your findings. You know where to go to find what tests were used. The answer is never going to be the abstract. It's going to be a part of the manuscript. But be able to tell me where that information is. Obviously, I'm not going to list statistics in the background. I'm not going to list the study purpose in the conclusion. It goes at the beginning. So just know where those things are. That's it. That's all that's in there. I just went through them all. So 3, maybe 4 select all applies. I don't remember how many I saw. Like I said, I'm really bad at not labeling when I title the question. I don't always put those at the beginning, but I see 3 that I did actually label that. But I'm thinking there's 4. 46 minutes. I don't think it's hard. I really don't. I intentionally did not write any that I thought were tricky. I thought they were ones that we discussed so much in detail, and you had so many resources on those things that if you know exactly what's on, I mean, there's a potential for maybe 1 question out of 30 to not be on that study guide just because I may have made a mistake, but I'm pretty daggone sure I know that everything that is on that outline is on that exam. Every single thing that I listed on there. I wouldn't actually, because I took like 3 things off of the outline because I ran out of questions, only had 30 questions. So I was like, well, that's not on there. So I'll just take that off the outline. There may be one of those ethical considerations that is not specifically listed by word, but the concepts are all in there. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have specific questions about anything?
Could we go over magnitude of the effect? I don't know why. It just like confuses me. I guess I'm confused at how magnitude of the effect is tied to reliability. Like how they affect each other.
Well, I don't think it's on the exam. Did I put that on the outline? I just closed my outline. Yeah, I didn't put it on the outline. That's not on there. Magnitude of the effect is more like, it's a little bit different from effect size, but it's considering like how big of an impact that study is going to make. So when you're looking at validity, how strongly is it supported? How well is it going to be generalizable? You know, how many people is it going to potentially impact? If we were looking at a very homogeneous group, then it's going to be very minimal on how much you can generalize it. So the magnitude of the effect is going to be smaller because of that. But that question, that topic is not on your test.
Okay, thanks.
For the informed consent, like you were saying, like know what needs to be on it, but then like things like under those sections, like I'm just confused because I like know like what needs to be in it, but like I was confused on like that Kahoot question, how like the procedures is like the time that it takes, and then like the participants, like I just don't really know where I'm supposed to like look to know what's under each section, I guess.
Hang on a second. Hi, buddy. What do you want? Hold on, I'm trying to find an example for you. Oh, 2 seconds. What are you doing? My little diabetic cat just strolled in the room. So I don't leave the door open very often. Trying to pull a good consent for you. Okay, so what in the, well, we'll just do it this way. Okay, can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, and that's the survey, not the consent. Hold on 2 seconds. Click the wrong thing. There's the consent. Okay, so this is an electronic consent. So that's a little bit uglier than what we would want a written one to look like. But these are the kind of things that have to be in there. So there's the purpose, the summary of the study. Okay, now they call it, our university calls it summary of the study. But what that is procedures. So anything that goes under summary of the study is what you would expect to see under procedures. Okay, so it's telling them exactly what they're going to be asked to do, which I said here. They're going to participate in demographic questions. They're going to be asked questions about level and type of physical activity, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to take them 10 to 15 minutes. And then at the end, if they want, they can enter into a drawing for an Amazon gift card. Okay, that's procedures. It's also called summary of study. Risks and discomforts, I have to list those in there. It's a survey that it's not asking anything difficult. Shouldn't be any risks or discomforts. The benefits, well, compensation is not a benefit, so that's not listed in there. This is telling them how they may not benefit personally, but we want to be able to identify areas of improvement. One thing that I probably should have put in the consent that we didn't, actually at the end of this survey, they are provided with a link that takes them to a CDC site that has resources for people during a pandemic. So that technically would be considered a benefit that they get that's a public link, but we've given them direct access to it. And then confidentiality in records. So anything about how I'm going to maintain their confidentiality. Well, with the gift card, they don't have to enter the drawing if they don't want to. Because if they do, they have to include an email address, which may or may not identify who they are if it has their name on it. So as a part of that, if they answer yes, they want to enter, it takes them to another screen that gives them a link to another survey that all they have to do is put their email address in, because then that connects their answers, that takes their answers away from their email address, because I don't want to know who answered what. So that's what I would describe under confidentiality. Compensation, like I said, this is ugly because this is an electronic version, but you put a documentation, you put something there. They will receive no compensation for everybody. However, they can enter to win one of 5 $50 gift cards. But that then tells them that I am then going to have their name and contact information. The rest of these things are also all required by the university to be in there, but these are the main ones. So you have to have the purpose, the summary / procedures, the risks and discomforts, benefits, confidentiality, compensation. All that's got to be in there. And then contact information for the researchers. And then the university requires that we give contact information for the Office of Compliance, which is the main director, which is also in there. And then they require that we put these statements in here. By agreeing, you are agreeing that, blah. So when you're asking about like procedures, that's the kind of stuff that's in there. This section right here. What are we going to have them do? What is their participation involved? How long is it going to take? We don't have to tell them, like, this is the type of statistical tests we're going to run. Nobody cares about any of that. And if they have questions, they've got your contact information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helped. Thank you.
Anyone else? You guys got the link, right, for the Kahoot? I posted it in my class, Jordan. You guys, I know you asked for it. That's not it. Hold on. I posted it in my section. I don't think Mrs. Moyer has gotten it. I asked her if she wanted me to post it, and she said no, she'd do it. So I wasn't just going to go plop something in her class, but hang on. Let me get it here, and I'll post it here.
I can confirm it is not in Moyer's section anywhere.
Okay. She just hasn't put it in there yet. So here it is, and you can share it. Like I said, she's taken back over, so I wasn't going to just go post a bunch of stuff in her class. And I told Catherine I wasn't going to do a review, but said I would meet with her, and if she wanted to share the link, she could. And so you guys are all here because she asked me to meet, but I've just had a really busy week, so I was just like, just too tired. But, I'll be around tomorrow. I have office hours tomorrow, too, and usually if you send me a question on Teams or something, I'm generally sitting here all day, so it's not like I'm not going to see it for an extended period of time. So I'll usually try to answer you as quick as I can, and if you need a brief live session to clarify something that I just can't seem to get across to you in email or text form, then let me know, and I'll pop on for a few minutes and explain something to you if you have questions. But I don't think this one's really hard. I don't, because it's the same. There's only 30 questions, and it's all over, what, 4 PowerPoints? 3, maybe? What, qual and ethics?
Yeah, it's just 3.
So, yeah, and I think the outline's pretty self-explanatory. Like, literally exactly what I put on there is what is on the test. And I intentionally tried to make it easy because I need people to pass it. I don't need the scores to be bad. I'm not about to be given a bunch of bonus point assignments that I have to grade. It's too much work. But I think if you guys do average on this even, and your written and your final, those are good. Everybody will be fine. I'm not too super concerned about anybody at this point. So just message me if you have questions. I'll be around.
Thank you.
Hey guys.
Thank
you.
See ya.
Bye.
Welcome.